Hello, my name is Lucy and welcome back to the Lucy Loves Vintage Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Andrea from the Salt and Pepper Shaker Museum located in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. How long have you worked at the museum, Andrea?
Thank you, Lucy, so much for having me on your podcast. So the Salt and Pepper Shaker Museum started in 2002. My family and I moved from Central Texas to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is kind of like the gateway of the Smoky Mountains, to open the museum because of the amount of tourism that comes to this area, and also we fell in love with the mountains.
Mm-hmm. What got you interested in salt and pepper shakers?
Actually, I have my mom to thank for that. This is actually her whole collection. She collected for 35 years, and it started because she was an archaeologist for most of her life. And when we moved so many times over our, her lifetime, kind of thing, that she found herself no longer working with any particular university. So she was kind of getting bored, but she always loved anything historical, anything with history. And so she started running into salt and pepper shakers. And then she realized, as she was looking at running into salt and pepper shakers in different antique shops, antique malls, she realized that they are actually a snapshot of history of our society changing over time. So you can see how, the theme or the color or the material that was popular in the 20s changes by the 40s, the 70s, all the way until now. So it just kind of got the whole family involved in it, and she just was very passionate about the historical aspect, the artistry. I mean, some of these, there's so much effort and creativity and ingenuity put into it, and so it's addictive kind of a thing. It's contagious. The thrill of finding something we hadn't seen before, kind of a thing. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt, and that's how slowly over 35 years it grew to a huge number that my dad finally said, okay, this is enough. We have to do something with this because they're just taking up all the basement. They're taking up all over the house. We have to do something with this. And so we decided to move from Texas to Gatlinburg in 2002, and that's how we ended up with the museum. It's been going on ever since.
So did you open the museum in 2002?
We did, yes.
Roughly how many salt and pepper shakers are in the collection, if you give a rough estimate?
Sure. So in this museum, we have a little over 20,000 pairs. And then in 2010, my mom decided that she wanted to open another museum. And so again, we were going like, where should we do it? Blah, blah, blah. And so we ended up going to a place in Spain on the Mediterranean. And she opened another museum with another 20,000 pairs. And then about 8 years ago, we donated 14,000 pairs to a museum in Israel. So it's a lot of salt and pepper shakers.
So there are 2 salt and pepper shaker museums, or there were?
Yeah, there are. There's one here, and then there's one in Spain, and then there's a gentleman that he turned his private collection into a museum in Israel.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say is the Salt and Pepper Shaker Museum? Like, what salt and pepper shaker do guests say? I wish I could take that one home.
Oh my goodness. It's something that usually if they want to take it home, it's because it reminds them of a very important moment in their life or a person in their life. So usually like a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or even their parent, their mom or dad that collected, or not even be collectors, but they just remember this very strong emotion of, maybe a picnic or a trip, or they remember this certain shaker at the table when they were growing up, and it just left an impression. And so what a lot of people find as they're walking through the museum is it's kind of like walking down memory lane. So it will trigger this memory they haven't had in a long time. And they'll usually come back to the gift shop area and they'll say, do you sell any back there? And we're like, no, we can't sell anything back there. And like, oh, but please, please. And they'll tell us the story why it's so important, or what triggered such a strong emotion on them. So it really just varies. And it's like any other collectible item. It just depends what people are interested in. So if, we'll have people that are huge Disney fans, and so they want everything that's Disney. And then we'll have huge fans of Star Trek, and so they'll want anything that's Star Trek. Some people are looking for particular sets that match their dining table, the dishes that they have in their for the table setting and things like that. So it really just depends. I wouldn't know. I don't think there's one like specific one that everybody says, oh my gosh. It's a very personal thing, and anything that you can imagine has pretty much been created into salt and pepper shakers.
What is the rarest salt and pepper shaker, the one that's worth the most money or the hardest to find?
Okay, so there are a couple that come to mind. One is made out of titanium, and it's valuable and unique because it was created by a company in Nevada that works with joints and hips and things like that, for making body part, not body parts, I guess, but like bone, if you need like a hip replacement or something like that. It's usually made out of titanium. And so they made a pair of salt and pepper shakers, one for the president of the company, and the other one they shipped it as a gift to the museum. So that one, just because I know that there's only 2 in the world, so that makes it extremely rare. And then expensive, just because titanium is a very expensive metal to work with. So that's where the monetary value would be like. But the other one that I would also consider is a pretty close competitor to this is a butterfly wing, 2 butterfly wings. It makes one butterfly, but both wings are signed by Dolly Parton. And that was a one and only opportunity that we had, and she'll never do that again. So that's definitely the most rare. As far as value, well, if you love Dolly Parton, I'm sure you're willing to pay whatever.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What is your favorite salt and pepper shaker in the collection?
Which one?
Yeah, like of all the ones on display, do you have like a favorite, or does it change daily, or like?
Oh, so my favorite ones are the ones that are interactive. And what I mean by that is they're not just sitting there taking up space, but they actually do something. So, for example, there is a Mona Lisa salt and pepper shaker where she is the salt, and you have to remove her from the frame because the frame is the pepper shaker. So it's 3D kind of a look to it because she's inside the frame, then you have to remove her from the frame to use it. Or another great example is Mount St. Helen. And so it shows the mountain, the volcano actually, before it exploded. And then you remove the top part, and it shows you what the volcano looks like now after it exploded. So things that are interactive. There's another one that just blows my mind. It's an old-fashioned sewing machine, sewing machine that was in the table. And so it's an old-fashioned one. You'll have to look up to see pictures of what the real thing looked like. But it's a table with a black sewing machine. And when you take the lid and flip it down, the machine goes into the table. So you just end up having a regular table. And then when you have to do a sewing project, you lift the top of the table and the sewing machine pops up. That's in real life, and they did the same thing into salt and pepper shakers. And the shaker part are actually the drawers that are next to the machine that pop open when you open and close the table. But the amount of ingenuity and creativity and figuring out the gear that makes it go into the table, it's just mind-boggling, the effort put into a holder for salt and pepper. That's all this really is. And so those are my favorite ones, the ones that people really had to think really hard to create and figure out, kind of like a puzzle. If I was going to make a salt and pepper shaker that did something, what would I do and how would it work and all that kind of stuff. So those are the ones that I really enjoy collecting and finding.
Are there any shakers in the collection that are really funny, strange, or unexpected?
Oh boy. There are, so there's several funny ones, and again, it's up to everybody's sense of humor, I guess. But there is a shark, like a great white shark, and he has a leg in his mouth, and so the leg is magnetized to his mouth, and the leg is the salt, and he is the pepper. So if you want the salt, you have to pass the leg. So that's kind of like a dark humor kind of a thing. And then some other funny ones would be, let me see, which is the ones that I always hear people laughing when they're walking by. It's just, some of them are just very quirky. Like a lot of people just love any of the cartoon characters, and they'll get a chuckle out of them. There's another one that is covered in googly eyes. And you just go like, okay, that's really bizarre and strange that when you're shaking it, there's like googly eyes that are shaking along with the shaker. So yeah, it just depends on your sense of humor.
Do you mostly get shakers from donations, or does the museum seek out specific ones?
So this was all my mother's collection. She collected for 35 years, and what we have found over the years of being open is that it inspires people to go back home and open the box that they received from a loved one or an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent that passed away and left behind their collection of salt and pepper shakers. And so it gets people really curious and interested and inspiring them to start collecting. So it's really neat to see how it sparks people's curiosity, because really this is all, it's just, how curious are you just to see, what's inside that next box, or what's wrapped, in the paper, newspaper, or tissue paper, or something like that. So it's like a surprise box around Christmas time.
How do you keep the thousands of tiny shakers organized? Do you label them? Do you put them in boxes? How do you not confuse them?
So this is where my mother had this amazing ability to organize them in different categories. And within the categories, she kind of grouped them in different color sections. And it's almost like she made abstract paintings within each category using the colors of the salt and pepper shakers. So a great example is one section called the vegetable patch. And so you'll find everything that you could think of in a vegetable patch. We've got corn, tomatoes, we have eggplant, we have lettuce, we have potatoes, but we also have worms and snails and ants and all the things, or even little gnomes and elves, things that you would find in your garden and vegetable patch. And so she was able to make it very pleasing to the eye, not boring, but something that you could be staring on one little section, like a 1 foot by 1 foot square in your visual, and then you look next to it and you go back and you spot things that you didn't spot the first time around. So it's very impressive in the amount of quantity that you get surrounded by, and just the layering that she did with the colors. So it's not monotonous, where if it was up to me, I would put the tallest ones at the top, the medium-sized ones in the middle, and the small ones in the bottom, and it would just look really boring.
Interesting. Do you have international shakers from other countries, or mostly ones made in the United States?
Oh, absolutely. We have shakers made from all over the world, and that's what's so amazing, because when you really stop and think about it, there's very few things that every household in the world has that connects us all. And so, for example, my mom always liked to point out that not every household has a fork, but every household has a container for salt. So it's just one of those things that it connects us all, no matter where you live in this world. Everybody has to consume salt, because without salt, our body just doesn't work. It just, every single living thing in this planet needs to have salt. And that's the importance that salt had in our history, and why there were wars that were fought over salt sources, and why it was at one point considered more expensive than gold, because of the value that it has. Because without salt, we humans and animals just wouldn't be able to live. So it's incredible to see how such what one would consider something insignificant at your table, because on your dining room table you just have a salt shaker or a pepper shaker or both, kind of a thing. You just take it for granted. But when you step back and you look at the bigger picture of this planet, it's like one of those few things that connects us all, because we all have to have it.
How many salt and pepper shakers do you have, like, at home, and what is your favorite one in your collection?
So at home, let's see, we have about, I'm going to say about 500 pairs. We used to have more, but we lost our house to a wildfire in Gatlinburg back in 2016. It was the only wildfire that's ever hit this area, so it took everybody by surprise. And you know, it's just one of those catastrophic events that, you know, will change somebody's life. And so right now I would say we have about 500. A lot of them are space related, like science fiction, space, like UFOs and spaceships and, you know, Star Trek and Star Wars kind of a thing. And then we also love dachshunds. So we have a whole bunch of wiener dog salt and pepper shakers at home. We just love them to death.
The weirdest salt and pepper shaker you've ever seen? Like the one that comes to mind when you're like, that is the weirdest thing.
The weirdest. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here's a great example. There is, it's about 4 inches tall, and it's a pear, like the fruit, and the other pear is half eaten. And you just go like, who thought of making a half-eaten fruit to put on your table? Or another one is a toilet. You know, there's like a toilet with the lid that comes down, and when you open the lid, it says S&P, and then that's what you shake at your table. And I go, who would have thought of putting that at your table? Kind of, you know, like that's such a random thing to have. But I think that's what the importance is, that the shakers, once you have them all together, like after you've experienced the museum, is why have a boring table when you can have something fun? You know, why have a mundane, like, you know, white dishes, silver, you know, a knife and fork, and then just a boring glass salt and pepper shaker, when you can have something fun like a Jaws with a leg in his mouth, or, you know, toilets, and, you know, you're definitely be a conversation piece at your next dinner that you have with friends.
Which salt and pepper shaker is the oldest?
So the oldest one that's in the shape of a shaker is from 1877. That's when the patent came out, and it is a glass container with a goldish top and a stick, a metal stick that runs down into the container, into the glass container. And the stick was there so that it would break up the salt. Salt is a crystal, it's a rock. It wants to clump back up whenever there's like humidity kind of a thing. And so people always struggled throughout time on how to make salt more pourable and easier to use in cooking. And so for years and years, different chemists from all over the world were trying to figure out how to make salt pour. And then Morton came out with an additive in 1911, and it took off. It didn't add any flavor to the salt. It worked wonderfully, and so that's how his company, you know, got launched, Morton Salt Company. And their slogan is, when it rains, it pours, because that's what they were trying to fix. And so so that's how, after that, is when you had the big boom of salt and pepper shakers coming into the market. And then the second boom was right at the end of World War II. With the occupation of Japan, the Allied forces, the American government wanted to help the Japanese bring their economy back. And so they sent representatives from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, mostly the Midwest, that was very rich in the production of ceramic and glass. They sent those representatives to Japan and kick-started their economy, and so they had huge productions of dishes, salt and pepper shakers, tea sets that were then shipped to the U.S. for the American market.
Which salt and pepper shaker is the most expensive?
So the most expensive one, I would say, is in my heart is the Dolly Parton one that was signed by Dolly Parton, just because that's a one and only, and I love her to death. I'm a huge Dolly Parton fan. But there are other shakers. Again, it depends on the collector. If they're trying to finish a series that they've been collecting for all their life, and they're just missing that one particular one, who knows what they'd be willing to pay. So it's difficult to place a value on certain shakers in general, because it's a passion. Mm-hmm. There's certain things you love and certain things you don't love, and so that's where the value really comes.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for talking to me. And sharing these amazing stories. If you're ever in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, make sure to check out the Salt and Pepper Shaker Museum. And thank you for listening to the Lucy Loves Vintage podcast. I'll catch you next time.